Among the child people, Siddhartha went to see the merchant Kamaswami. He was shown into an opulent house. Servants led him over costly carpets into a chamber where the master of the house was waiting. Kamaswami entered, a brisk, sleek man with thick graying hair, very intelligent, cautious eyes, and a sensual mouth. Master and guest greeted each other warmly. "I have been told," said the merchant, "that you are a Brahmin, a learned man, but that you are seeking service with the merchant. Have you fallen on hard times, Brahmin, that you are looking for such work?" "No," said Siddhartha, "I have not fallen on hard times, nor have I ever known hard times. Know that I come from the Shramanas with whom I lived for a long time." "If you come from Shramanas, how could you not be hard up? Are not the Shramanas completely without possessions?" "I am indeed without possessions," said Siddhartha. "If that was what you mean, it is a fact that I am without possessions, but I am that way of my own free will and am therefore not hard up." "But what do you expect to live from if you have no possessions?" "I have never thought about it, my lord. I have been without possessions for more than 3 years, and I have never thought about what I should live from." "So he lived off the wealth of others. I suppose that is the case, but a merchant also lives from what others have." "Well said. He takes from others what is theirs, but not for nothing. He gives them wares in exchange." "That indeed seems to be the way things are. Everyone takes, everyone gives. Such is life. Everyone takes, everyone gives. Such is life," says Siddhartha. But permit me, if you are without possessions, what can you expect to give? Everyone gives what he has. The warrior gives strength, the merchant gives merchandise, the teacher teaching, the farmer rice, the fisherman fish. Fine. And so what is it now that you have to give? What have you learned? What can you do? "I can think, I can wait, I can fast." "Is that all?" "I think that is all." "And what is that good for? Example, fasting. What is it good for?" "It is an excellent thing, my lord. When a person has nothing to eat, then fasting is the most intelligent thing he can do." If, for example, Siddhartha had not learned to fast today, he would have to take on just any work at all. If not with you, then anywhere, because hunger would force him to do it. But Siddhartha can calmly wait. He knows no impatience, no state of need. He can withstand a siege of hunger for a long time and laugh too. That, my lord, is what fasting is good for. "You're right, Shramana. Wait a minute." Kamaswami left and came back with the scroll, which he handed to his guest and asked, "Can you read this?" Siddhartha looked at the scroll on which a sales contract was written and began to read out its contents. "Superb," said Kamaswami. "And would you write something for me on the sheet?" He gave him a piece of paper and pen. Siddhartha wrote and gave the sheet back. Kamaswami read, "Writing is good, thinking is better. Cleverness is good, patience is better." "You are a first-rate writer," the merchant praised. "We have many things still to talk about. For today I invite you to be my guest and reside in my house. Writing is good, thinking is better. Cleverness is good, patience is better." Siddhartha thanked him and accepted him. He now lived in the house of the merchant. Clothes were brought to him and shoes, and a servant drew a bath for him every day. Twice a day an opulent meal was brought up to him. But Siddhartha ate only once a day and neither ate meat nor drank wine. Kamaswami told him about this business, showed him his merchandise in his warehouse, showed him his accounts. Siddhartha became acquainted with many new things. He listened a great deal and spoke little, and remembering Kamala's words, he never subordinated himself to the merchant, forcing him to treat him as equal or more than his equal. Kamaswami ran his business with painstaking care and often with passion, but Siddhartha regarded all this as a game whose rules he made every effort to learn, but whose content never touched his heart. He was not in Kamaswami's house long before he began to take part in his landlord's business, but every day at the time she told him, he visited the beautiful Kamala, wearing handsome clothes and fine shoes, and soon he was bringing gifts too. He learned much from her red, intelligent mouth. He learned much from her soft, supple hand. He was still a mere boy in matters of love, intended to throw himself blindly and insatiably into his pleasures as though into a bottomless pit. But she introduced him from the beginning to the doctrine that one cannot take pleasure without giving it, and that each gesture, each caress, each touch, each glance, each smallest part of body has its own secret, which brings happiness to the one who knows how to draw it into the open. She taught him that lovers should never part after their feast of love without expressing admiration to another, without owning oneself as much the conquered as the conqueror, so that neither party experiences satiety, satiety, or emptiness, nor the nasty feeling of having merely used the other or been merely used. I love this part. Don't make sex awkward, Wondrous hours he spent in the company of the beautiful and intelligent virtuoso who became her student, her lover, her friend. Here with Kamala lay at this time the value and meaning of his life, not in Kamaswami's business. The merchant taught him how to write important letters and contracts and became accustomed to consulting him on all matters of importance. He was quick to see that SIDDHARTHA understood little about rice and wool, ships, voyages, and business dealings, but that he had a lucky touch. That SIDDHARTHA exceeded his own ability for calmness and equanimity, and the art of listening and seeing into the hearts of strangers. This Brahmin, he said to a friend of his, is no real merchant and will never be one, nor does he have the passion for business. But he possesses the secret of one to whom success comes by itself, whether because he was born under the right star, or whether as a result of magic or on account of something he learned from the Shramanas. He always gives the impression of merely toying with business dealings. He never gets truly involved in them. They never dominate his mind. He never fears failure. Is never bothered by loss. The merchant's friend gave him this advice: give him a third of the profit of the business he does for you, but let him also bear the same percentage of loss if loss occurs. That will arouse some enthusiasm. Kamaswami followed this advice. SIDDHARTHA, however, paid little attention. If he made a profit, he took it in without emotion. If he made a loss, he laughed and said, oh my, this did not go well. It really seemed as though he was indifferent to business. Once he traveled to a village to buy up a large rice crop, but when he arrived, the rice had already been sold to another dealer. Nevertheless, SIDDHARTHA remained a number of days in that village, hosted the farmers, gave their children copper coins, joined in a wedding celebration, and came back from the journey quite content. Kamaswami took him to ask for not coming back immediately, for wasting time and money. SIDDHARTHA responded, give up your scolding, my friend. Nothing has ever been achieved by scolding. If we have taken a loss, then let me stand the loss. I am very content with this trip. I got to know a lot of people. I made friends with a Brahmin. I had children sitting on my lap. Farmers showing me their fields. No one treated me like a merchant. That's all quite lovely, exclaimed Kamaswami indignantly. But you are in fact a merchant, or so I thought. Or was that just a pleasure trip you took? Definitely, laughed SIDDHARTHA. I definitely took that trip for pleasure. Why else? I got to know people and places. I enjoyed hospitality and trust. I found friendship, you see, my friend. If I had been Kamaswami, as soon as I saw that my business deal was foiled, I would have turned around instantly and come back home totally upset. The time and money would in fact have been lost. But in my case, I had a good few days, learned things, had a good time, and harmed neither myself nor anyone else through anger or haste. And if I ever go back there, perhaps to buy a future crop, or for whatever purpose, I will be warmly and kindly received by my friendly people, and I will congratulate myself for not having been abrupt or shown irritation the last time. So let well enough alone, my friend. Do not harm yourself by scolding me. If the day comes when you see that SIDDHARTHA is doing you damage, just say the word and SIDDHARTHA will be on his way. But until that time, let us be content with one another. The merchant's attempts to convince SIDDHARTHA that he was eating his Kamaswami's bread were also in vain. SIDDHARTHA was eating his own bread, or rather they were both eating other people's bread, everyone's bread. Never did SIDDHARTHA have an ear for Kamaswami's worries, and Kamaswami worried a lot. If a business deal was in progress that threatened to fail, if his goods shipment seemed to be lost, if a debtor seemed unable to pay, never could Kamaswami convince his colleague that it was useful to waste words on worry or anger, to furrow one's brow, to sleep badly. Once when Kamaswami was reproaching him by saying he had learned everything he knew from him, SIDDHARTHA replied as follows: you will have to come up with better jokes than that. From you I have learned how much a basket of fish costs and how much interest you can demand on borrowed money. But that is not real knowledge. I did not learn thinking from you, dear Kamaswami. Better you should try to learn it from me. In truth, his heart was not in the business. His business deals had the virtue of producing money for Kamala, and they produced a lot more than he needed for that. Aside from that, SIDDHARTHA's only interest and curiosity was for the people whose business dealings, handwork, cares, pleasures, and follies had formerly been as alien and remote to him as the moon. As easy as it was for him to talk to everyone, get along with everyone, learn from everyone, to that very extent, there was something that separated him from these people. This was clear to him, and this thing that set him apart was his being a Shramana. He saw people going through their lives in the manner of a child or an animal, and he both loved and disdained this at the same time. He saw them striving and suffering and getting gray over things that seemed to him completely unworthy of this price, over money, over small pleasures, over a little respect. He saw them chiding and insulting one another. He saw them bemoaning pains that the Shramana smiled over and suffering from privations that a Shramana did not feel. He was open to everything that these people came to him with. He welcomed the merchant who had linen on offer. He welcomed the merchant who had linen on offer, the debtor who was looking for a loan, the beggar who spent an hour recounting the story of his poverty and who was not half as poor as a Shramana. Rich foreign merchants he treated no differently than the servant who shaved him, or the street vendor whom he allowed to cheat him out of a few small coins when he bought bananas. When Kamaswami came to him to complain about his troubles or to take him to task over some business deal, he would listen with good humor and interest, marveling over him, trying to understand him. He would allow him to think he was right to the extent that he seemed to require, and then would move on to the next person who sought his attention. And many people came to him. Many came to do business with him, to cheat him. Many came to question him. Many came to make a claim on his compassion. Many to get his advice. He gave advice, sympathized with people, gave gifts. He let himself be cheated a little in the whole game, and the passion with which people played the game occupied his thoughts just as much as the gods and Brahmin ones had. Now and then he sensed deep in his breast a faint moribund voice, which faintly warned, softly complained. He could barely hear it. Then one day it came to his mind that he was leading a strange life, that the things he was occupied with were purely a game, that though he was in a cheerful frame of mind and sometimes felt happy, real life was passing him by without touching him. He was playing with his business dealings the way a juggler plays with balls, in the same way he played with the people around him, watched them, was amused by them. But he was not present to all this with his heart, with the wellspring of his being. That spring was running somewhere far away, running on unseen, and had nothing to do with his life anymore. More than once he recoiled from these thoughts, wishing it were possible for him to take part wholeheartedly and enthusiastically in the childish goings-on of everyday life, to be able to really to live, really to act, really to enjoy life, instead of merely being an observer watching it go by. But he kept coming back to the beautiful Kamala. He learned the art of love, practiced the rites of pleasure, in which, more than anywhere else, giving and taking became one. He prattled with her, learned from her, gave and received advice. She understood better than Govinda ever had. She was more like him. One day he said to her, "You are like me. You are different from most people. You are Kamala, no one else. And within you there is a stillness, a haven to which you can withdraw at any time and be at home there, just as I can. Few people have that, but yet all of them could have it." "Not all people are smart," said Kamala. "No," said Siddhartha. "It does not depend on that. Kamaswami is as smart as I am. Yet he has no haven within him. Others do have it, who are mere children as far as their understanding goes. Most people, Kamala, are like fallen leaves that blow and whirl about in the air, that dip and fall to earth, but others, only a few, are like stars which move on a fixed course where no wind reaches them. They have their law and their course within them. Among all the scholars of the Shramanas, of whom I know so many, there was one who was perfect in this sense. I can never forget him. That was Gautama, the exalted one, the expounder of the teaching. Thousands of disciples listen to his teaching every day, follow his precepts hour by hour. But they are all fallen leaves. They do not contain the law and the teaching within themselves." Kamala regarded him with a smile. "Again you are talking about him," she said. "Once again you are thinking Shramana thoughts." Siddhartha stopped talking and they played a game of love. One of the 30 or 40 games that Kamala knew. Her body was pliant, P-L-I-A-N-T, like that of a jaguar, or like a hunter's bow. Whoever was her student in love became acquainted with many pleasures and many secrets. Long she played the game with Siddhartha, seducing him. Long she played the game with Siddhartha, seducing him. Seducing him, denying him, taking him by force, engulfing him in her embrace, enjoying her mastery until he was subdued and exhausted and resting at her side. The courtesan bent over him, looked long into his face and into his now tired eyes. You are the best lover I have ever encountered," she said doubtfully. "You are stronger than the others, more supple, more willing. You have learned my art well, Siddhartha. Someday, when I am older, I would like to have a child of yours. But in spite of all that, my dear, you have remained a Shramana. You do not love me. You love no one. Is that not so?" "That may well be," Siddhartha said tiredly. "I am like you. You too do not love. Otherwise, how could you practice love as an art? People of our type are perhaps incapable of love. The child people are capable of it. That is their secret." "You are the best lover I have ever encountered," she said thoughtfully. "You are stronger than the others, more supple, more willing. You have learned my art well, Siddhartha. Someday when I am older, I would like to have a child of yours. But in spite of all that, my dear, you have remained a Shramana. And you do not love me. You love no one. Is that not so?" "That may well be," Siddhartha said tiredly. "I am like you. You too do not love. Otherwise, how could you practice love as an art? People of our type are perhaps incapable of love. The child people are capable of it. That is their secret. The child people, the ones that don't really think much, the simple people." Look at my hair, my little baby hair. Peace.